Hello and welcome back to the Arturia Jupiter-8 video series. Today we're going to be dealing with chorus and flange effects, but just before we do, a very quick mention of this tab over here, the keyboard tab. It's too simple to spend very much time on. Basically, this allows us to map modulation outputs according to velocity and aftertouch. Really straightforward. So map to pitch, give it some. And now if I play a very light note, play a harder note, it's literally that simple. Same kind of thing with aftertouch. Turn that off, turn this on. So there's my key down. Now I'll engage aftertouch, and there it goes. Really straightforward stuff. Now, ordinarily, or very often, I just kind of gloss over the effects units in synthesizers because most synths have chorus and delay or whatever, but they're implemented in a reasonably complex and rich way on the Jupiter. So I wanted to spend some time today talking about the chorus and flanger module. The first thing to note is over here, you see voice upper and patch. It says voice upper because this is a single panel sound. If I switch to dual mode and click the lower button, now it says voice lower. So these two effects up here are inserted into the signal chain where they say they are. So out of the VCO, the first effects unit is here before it gets to the filter, which is kind of there. And then we've got coming out of the filter into another effects unit into the VCA, which is kind of there. So you can insert effects at those points. And so it's important to bear in mind sometimes signal chains matter. Whether or not you apply an effect before or after the filter can have tonal consequences. But we're not here to talk about signal chain processing today. We're here to talk about the chorus and flanger unit. Okay, so I've set all the controls of this unit to basically nothing, and I've turned it off so that we can get some kind of baseline. I'm just going to move this over here so that we can see insight. There's a sawtooth, nice and easy. Let's turn it on. Don't forget, no values have been set, no amount of chorus has been applied yet. And yet we've got these two big notches being cut out of the frequency range. That's called a comb filter. What's basically happened here is that a copy of the signal has been made, and those two signals have been mixed together and equalized so that their output volume is stable. It doesn't double the volume simply because there's two signals there. But what we've got is a very slight offset. The unit itself, even though I've set all of these controls down to naught or at minimum, they are actually still having an effect. That there are two signals there, and those two signals are causing a couple of these notches to be cut out of the frequency curve. I'll deal with comb filtering another time, but suffice to say that's the fundamental basis of a chorus unit. You make a copy, you offset those copies, and then in both chorus and flange units, which is why they've been combined together in this module, you apply an LFO to the copy, to the pitch of the copy. You modulate the pitch of the second wave very slightly, and it's that effect that causes classic chorus and flange sounds. Now, traditionally or typically, chorus effects have a delay and a timed offset between the two signals of like more than 50 milliseconds. Flange units work in the kind of 15 to 20 millisecond range typically, and they also include a feedback option. So you see this feedback control here. We'll get into a little bit of that when we talk about flanging. So let's mess around with some of these controls and see what we've got. There's our basic sound. Now with amount set to 0, it doesn't really matter what we do with the delay, because we've generated these two waves, but we're not actually able to have any effect with them. I can turn this up as high as I want. We don't see any change in the graph at all. That's because there's no modulation effect being applied. The two waves are still basically at their start position. Only by introducing an amount, a depth of modulation, do we start to apply this time-based delay pitch offset. So now, if I bring this up to, let's say 70 milliseconds, that's fine, and start introducing an amount, you'll hear and see some strobing effects. Now at the moment, we've got the rate set really, really slow. I'm going to speed it up a bit, and you'll see those strobing effects speed up. So that's the pitch offset, the amount of pitch increase for the second wave being modulated, which means sometimes it's getting longer, and sometimes the pitch is going down. Sometimes it's getting the frequency is going up, and the pitch is getting higher. And this is the combination of those two waves. That's the fundamental basis of all chorus and flange effects. It doesn't sound very much like a chorus at the moment because you've got to get these amounts right. With a chorus, you're typically looking there you go, we're in the ballpark now. See now much more complex interactions going on. So what's that? Roughly every 2.5 seconds this cycle is completing with a rate of 0.4 Hertz. This amount knob is the amount by which the delay time is being modulated. So there's an LFO, like I said, being applied to the delay time of the copied wave. And it takes a little bit of kind of wrapping your head around, but if you modulate a copied wave, the delay time of a copied wave, that's exactly the same effect as you're basically increasing or decreasing its pitch. Because if you increase the delay time, it means you're slowing down the number of waves that are being generated, and vice versa. And so that results in an increase or decrease in pitch. So what we're getting with the modulation effect is an increase and decrease in pitch. Now we can see, as we increase the amount knob, the strobe gets deeper, it travels further into this graphical interface. You're basically applying more delay to the effect. You're changing the minimum and maximum pitches that the second wave is modulated by to a greater range. But they're always being applied at the same rate, at the same speed. This is the rate. So if I increase this, and now we get the other kind of chorus effect, the fast kind of flickering chorus effect. The relationship between rate and amount for chorus and flange is really intimate. The two controls have a very dramatic effect. You pretty much don't ever see a chorus or flange effect that doesn't have a rate, and it's called amount here, but it's usually depth or modulation. And it's more of an art than a science to mess with these two controls, because trying to understand the mathematical complexities of all of the interactions of these waves is beyond most of us, it's beyond me. But you hear it and you get a feel for what kind of settings, what kind of sounds sound good. Now on the Jupiter, most of the sweet spots, as far as I'm concerned, come very, very low down in the amount knob. And then up here, it starts sounding more like a science fiction sound effect, which might be what you want. it's a tiny amount there, which means that the depth of modulation that's being applied to the delay time is very, very subtle, and that's kind of what you're looking for with chorus. It's a subtle effect. Let's see what we can do about generating a flange sound. So the first thing that I'm going to do, just by kind of first principles, by musical first principles, I know that flanges typically have smaller delays, and I know they have feedback loops. So let's see what we've got. There's our kind of flanging sound. Now, can you hear we're getting the intense flange sound when I change the delay amount? That's a function of the feedback being fed back into this unit. Don't forget, if you've got feedback, the signal that's coming out of your unit is coming back in, and that new signal is then being processed. Well, if I didn't have feedback, changing the delay amount wouldn't have this kind of dramatic effect, because it's the fed back signal that's doing it. And we can automate that. And this is one of the things that's cool about the Jupiter. These settings over here allow you to apply modulation effects to each of these controls. So if I tie an LFO into the delay time, now I'm having the same effect as if I'm manually playing with this control over here, because that's what the LFO is doing. It's dynamically modulating the delay time of the effect. Just get back to my default. Now this type value down here goes from 1 to 4. It basically adds extra copies to the sound, and we can see this really easily with Insight. So here we're operating at about -25, something like that. If I introduce an extra wave, a type 2 chorus, this is now at around about -20, and every time I increase this type value, the wave gets louder. More and more signals, more and more waves are being added to the path, and more waves mean more sound. Once we've got these 3 copies thickening and enriching the sound, we can then spread them out, and that's going to have all sorts. Don't forget, all of these waves are modulating in the background, and the sound is going to get very complex. Too complex and you're going to lose the effect. You need to be careful. Like I say, subtlety is the key with many of these effects, particularly chorus. Now, this unit is mono. At the end of the chain on the entire patch, we also have the option to have a stereo chorus. And the difference between stereo chorus is it's quite a significant difference from mono. What happens is basically the copy that's been taken, an additional copy is taken, so now we've got 3 copies of the original wave, and copy number 3 is phase shifted. So now where you've got peaks for copy number 1, you'd have troughs for copy number 2, and then those 2 copies can be panned left and right. The amount by which they're panned left and right is called the width value, and you get a really thick, lush stereo chorus. Is just absolutely gorgeous. Let's hear it. You can also, because we've got multiple waves here, spread them out. You can hear it starting to sound like it's been detuned, but at subtle effects you just get a thickening. Width is particularly where it's at with chorus. The difference between the 2 copies is accentuated, basically maximised when it's concentrated in each ear. And then we can turn that into more of a flange effect by increasing the feedback, reducing the delay time. There we go. Now, there's no modulation routing on the stereo output, but we can solve that, can't we? Go over to our quick controls, put it in learn mode, twiddle the knob, turn learn mode off, and now slider number 1 on my keyboard. Is automatable. Sync, just like everywhere else on the synthesizer, synchronizes the rate to your host BPM. Nothing special there. I hope you found this video useful, and we'll continue our examination of the effects units next time. Hope to see you then. Thanks a lot.